Cup!
Is enough for Collingwood. Centennial Cup champions in 2024.
Hello, folks, and welcome once again to the OJHL All Access podcast. I am Alex Bastiavansky. Great to have you along once again. Can you feel it? It's in the air. Playoff fever. Just a few weeks remaining of regular season play before we get to the postseason, the most wonderful time of the year. And today we are going to go over a bunch of things as the battle for the playoff positioning continues. Joining me to help me with it will be broadcaster Jaren Kligman of the Toronto Junior Canadiens. We are going to chat first about the JRCs and their fantastic play so far this season that currently has them sitting second in the East behind the Trenton Golden Hawks and 11th overall in the CJHL national rankings. Let's go over those rankings. Yes, sorry to spoil the news about the JRCs, but here are the latest rankings. Trenton is number 1. Leamington, number 5. Collingwood is in 9th. The JRCs, as mentioned, in 11th spot. Haliburton County picked up an honorable mention. Now, how does that compare to the OJHL Coaches Power Rankings? And once again, this week, it's a bit spicy. They do have Trenton at number 1, the Flyers number 2, and Collingwood number 3, which matches up with the CJHL rankings of OJHL teams. But again, same as last week, they've got the Menace all the way up into number 4, surpassing both the Huskies with their honorable mention and the Junior Canadiens in those CJHL rankings. And of course, the Menace didn't even pick up an honorable mention in the national rankings. So fascinating to get the OJHL coach's perspective. And I will talk to Jaren on his opinion about the Menace being so high in the coaches' rankings as opposed to CJHL. They've got the Patriots coming in at number 7, the Wellington Dukes number 8, Burlington number 9, and the Stouffville Spirit at number 10. Some absolutely insane news out of St. Mike's from last Friday. The Buzzers scored 4 shorthanded goals in the span of 4 minutes in the third period against the Caledon Admirals. 4 shorties within 4 minutes consecutively. The NHL record for shorthanded goals in a game is 4, set by the Winnipeg Jets back in 1995. Thank you to Ron Valentine for that information, by the way. Now, whether those goals by the Jets were all in a row and within a 4-minute time span, don't know, but I highly doubt it. Unfortunately, the St. Mike's broadcast cut out after only 2 of the goals, but the Buzzers went on to win the game 8-0. That is an unbelievable accomplishment by the Buzzers, those shorthanded goals. And just a reminder for prospective OJHL players, the annual league combine is taking place April 22nd through the 25th at the 16 Mile Sports Complex in Oakville. Players get the chance to strut their stuff in front of all OJHL member clubs, coaches, and general managers. Players will participate in 1 practice and 4 games, as well as 2 seminars. Into ojhl.ca for more information. And joining me now, and I'm sure he's going to have lots of thoughts regarding those the CGHL rankings and the coaches' power rankings in regards to his Toronto Junior Canadiens, is JRC's broadcaster Jaren Kligman. Jaren, it's been a while, man. Long time no see. How are things going?
Things are going well, Alex. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be on, and I'm excited to get started today.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little JRCs off the top, and then we'll get into just chit-chatting about the league because, of course, we're, 3 weeks away, I guess, from the playoffs now. So wanted to get your thoughts on everything as we're getting down the stretch here. Let's start with the Junior Canadiens, though. I mean, great season. 36-9-0-3 at the point that we're talking right now anyway. Second in the East, 11th in all of Canada in those CJHL rankings, which we will get to in a moment. But talk about the JRCs and what you've thought of their play so far.
Well, it's been unbelievable. You know, as you said, of course, second in the conference. really just from the get-go of the season, it was a very defensive team. Really ramping down on the defensive element of the game. In years past, Junior Canadiens have always been known for their offense, but from September through to now, defense has been paramount. And it seems like since the calendar turned into 2025, we've seen a little bit more of that offense coming in. But from the start of the year, there were so many intense, tight games from the back end. You know, the Canadiens started out the year obviously with Joel Taylor and Dylan Blythe, that shutdown D pair. They added Connor Thompson-Dick at the back, and it's really helped them bring some of their younger 07, 06 born defensemen to the surface and help them get comfortable. Of course, on the offensive side, they're led by Nathan Phillips. The addition of Gabriel Chirallo has been fantastic for the Junior Canadiens, but the young group, Alex, I think is what's really separated this team. A lot of 07 and 06 born players, Ilya Shabinsky, Jay Feldberg, Lucas Teixeira, all cementing their role and have really gotten better as the season has gone on. But the defensive element was something I was not expecting heading into this year. Not that other Junior Canadiens teams haven't been defensive in the past, but it was remarkable how little they were allowing. The goaltending has been solid, of course, with Amir Valyulin coming in and winning back-to-back goaltenders of the month. So overall, the Junior Canadiens have just been riding away from the start of the season on that defensive side. But from January on, that offense has really started to percolate. Guys are getting more comfortable. They're gelling. And overall, it's a huge team effort. You know, it's not anyone running away and taking the reins. Obviously, you know, Phillips is up at the top and Chirallo is second, but everyone else has really pulled their weight, both in the two-way element of the game, the defensive level of the game, and the intensity. And all in all, it's come together to put a second-place team up there, and we'll see how far they continue to climb.
Yeah, 106 goals allowed, which is by my count, third lowest in the entire league. So you're right. That is saying something about the defense. You mentioned Chirallo and Phillips. They're the one to punch up in terms of the top two scorers on the squad. Over the years, we've seen some super high-end players come out of the JRCs. I mean, no question about it, you know, from your Tyler Fukakuzas. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And Teverberg. And this season, I mean, Chirallo is the top scorer on the team. He's 47th overall, tied for 47th overall in the league. And you look up and down the lineup offensively, and it's just been a much more balanced approach to scoring this year, hasn't it?
100%. I mean, you know, recently we did a game a couple week ago with St. Mike's, and Canadiens won 4-1, and every single player that scored all 4 goals has less than 10 goals on the year. But what it really comes down to is it's a complete team effort from all 4 lines rolling. You have really good two-way skilled players, for example, Joseph McKeown and Jordan Carafile, who I think their ceiling would allow them to score more goals. But the system and the way that it's gone, it just hasn't needed to happen, right? Goals have been timely. It's not necessarily how much if you're going to accrue so many in one game, blowing out teams. They've been tight, intense games up and down the lineup, and everyone has different roles. You get a lot of intensity from the bottom players. Jacob Crisp has been fantastic in the shot blocking department. Brett Bouchard on the penalty kill. I mentioned earlier Lucas Teixeira, his end-to-end ability coming from the O-zone to the neutral zone and into the O-zone again. Both ways, you have these guys who have a lot of skill and a lot of talent, but you don't need to have those 2-3 goal games. Everyone has the timely scoring ability, and they're able to all share the rock. And I think that has been the secret to the success. And another thing, Alex, is the play of Christian Lamanna. Lamanna has been such a good spacer out there, a fantastic playmaker, really had helped generate a little bit of juice on the power play as well, an area that I think the Junior Canadiens would have wanted to have been more consistent, but certainly has developed a bit more into the second part of the season from January on. So all of these players have really come together. And like I said, you're not going to have everyone scoring 15 to 20 goals, and you don't need that. Jay Feldberg and Ilya Shabinsky have chipped in to help out Phillips and Chirallo, tailing in the scoring. And when you have that full effort, and you have the timely ability to get ahead and win these tight games, there's really no complaints if guys have a bit more lower goal totals. What matters is they're contributing in the way they need to get wins.
Yeah. I mean, so the last time you guys got really close, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but in 2022 now, right? Against the Panthers, Game 7, and you were favored that season to win it. You had a powerful team. Game 7 at the Pond, you're calling the game. But the first question is, first question is, before I get to what this team can do, and we get on to the rest of the business in the league, is what was that like for you calling that game and having to call that? I mean, first of all, the goal getting called back, the JRCs, and secondly, you having to call a Panthers winning goal, taking it on your home ice, and with all due respect to the Panthers, because they had a great team. Rob Pierce had a great team that year, and they made it all the way to the Centennial Cup final. But what was that experience like in Game 7 for you calling that?
Well, it was unique. I'll say that as much. Listen, I think that year it was a very weird year. Obviously, if you remember, the playoff rounds had been shorter. That finals was the first series that was 7 games. So it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable atmosphere. I think it was unique having 2 GTA teams in the final, a little bit of a different atmosphere. Some, you don't have as much of the crowd all the time, but everyone was super into it for that final. And, listen, the goal gets called back. There's a collective groan in the audience. Everyone is pretty bummed out about that, but you just got to refocus. And I think everyone did. The game kept going on. And then Ryan Johnstone got that game winner, 37 seconds left. And, I think in the moment, obviously, being with the JRC for as long as I had been at the time and still now, there is a bit of disappointment. But at the same time, the Panthers were a fantastic team. They had a lot of depth that year, a lot of veteran players who had been around for a while in the league. They had made additions. And so, they celebrated in the end. They were able to take home the Buckland, and it was a very bittersweet moment. But overall, in terms of the actual gameplay, it was probably one of the most intense moments as a broadcaster you could find. Game 7 at home, and everyone was so hungry for hockey that year because it had been so long with all the shutdown and everything like that. So definitely one of the best moments for me in terms of from a broadcasting perspective to be a part of a moment like that. But ultimately, it would have been nice if the opposite had happened.
One thing I'll say about you, Jaren, is one of the ways in which I judge a broadcaster and how I like their calls and how much I like their calls is I do love a homer in the sense that you love someone to be super passionate about their home team, about the team they call all the time, the team that hires them to do the games. And you've got some great calls, some really inventive calls, as I mentioned, I think off the top here. But I also judge them by how engaged they stay when the opposition scores. Do they sound like they're about to cry and they're so depressed by the fact that the opposition has scored a goal? Or do they maintain that level of professionalism during the goal call? Yeah, the enthusiasm is going to go down a touch, but are you still going to acknowledge the fact that the other team scored? It's an important goal, and maybe it was a really nice goal too. And not every broadcaster out there, I'm talking professionals as well, are able to thread that needle. And I'm just paying you a compliment because you do. Even on that game-winning goal, for the way that you said it, and when Trenton knocked you guys out in the playoffs, you're always really good about the calls, positive and negative. Okay, I'm going off here, but one question. So keep this one to 30 seconds because we got to move on to the league stuff. But is this a team you feel can win it all this season?
100%. I'm very confident in their ability to do that from the goaltending, the defense, and the forward core. It's not going to be easy, but this team has the heart, they have the desire, and they have the pieces to put it all together to come home on top.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll definitely be chatting that more as the season goes along with you. So let's shift to the league in general now. And playoffs, as mentioned, kick off in about 3 weeks' time, I guess now. And what to you is the most fascinating battle for playoff position that's taking place right now?
Well, I think if you look in the East, I think the Stouffville-Wellington dynamic is interesting because they've played recently, and there was a 7-6 Spirit victory. It was a complete, shootout and stuff. So I think, the home positioning would make a difference there. It seems like the edge is to Wellington, but I don't know. I'm excited because those two teams, speaking from a broadcaster's perspective, Alex, those are two teams I really enjoy calling. They play a lot of very little gaps in between their style of play. Not a lot of whistles, a lot of continuous play, especially from Stouffville. The Spirit, of course, had played the Junior Canadiens earlier in the season. We were finished with them by December, so they've changed a little bit, I'm sure, in the style.
They beat you guys on your home ice, didn't they? The
Sorry?
Spirit, did they take you guys down on home ice at the pond?
Yeah, once. And then we
yeah.
won one time in overtime at home. 3-1, we won the season series. But they were a very exciting team, and it seems they've elevated. Riley Pope has had a really good second half. He's really stepped up for Stouffville on the offense. And I think the Dukes did well at the deadline, adding Jaden Levesque, Zenon Edwards. It'll be interesting. That, to me, it's not as much the race in the regular season, but I think the matchup overall between those two teams is going to be really exciting because the winner is going to be extremely battle-tested for going further. In terms of battles, I think you have to look to the Western.
Two good teams, and I'm glad that we're giving a little bit of love to Stouffville here.
For sure, yeah.
Because they might have had some somewhat competitive teams over the last few years, but, 2012 was the last time that they won. I still remember that Spirit team because I was filming for Georgetown, and it went 7 games, and I think it was Christian Finch was his name. You would have been a youngster back then, Jaren. I'm not sure if you would remember that or not, but Christian Finch was unbelievable for the Stouffville Spirit, and there was Finch and Power was the other guy, and Georgetown had a good team that year, and Stouffville got past them, got past Whitby in the final, and made it to the Centennial that year. So I'm glad that we're talking about Stouffville again because it's great to see them in playoff position. And as you mentioned, a strong team with a significant shot. But anyway, continue on about you were saying about good playoff races.
Well, yeah, I think in the West, you see the East, it's a little bit different. I think there's a bit more separation in the East now. A little bit of a battle in the East with Cobourg and St. Mike's jockeying between 6 and 7. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that the big battle and race is in the West with Burlington, Buffalo, and the Patriots. It's a really huge battle, and I think, speaking with people earlier in my time in the league, one of the huge things, Alex, especially in a first-round matchup, is travel. And I think, Burlington and the Patriots, they don't want a situation where they're going to have to travel to Buffalo for potentially 4 games. It's really going to exhaust a team like that, especially in the first round. You don't want to have to go through that early on in the playoffs. So I think the Cougars and the Patriots are going to be doing as much as they can. I think there's one more matchup between Toronto and Burlington later on before the season ends. And I'm really confident that matchup and those teams jockeying is going to be some of the most exciting hockey down the stretch, just because they're all so close. You know that they're all going to make it, but the home ice, the not needing to go to Buffalo 4 times, and just, it adds a little bit of an element of
you want to avoid you also, as much as you can, want to avoid Leamington, Collingwood, and Milton, right?
It would be 6. So you have Milton. Yeah, exactly.
And there's the 4-5 kind of thing. So, Buffalo travel's one thing, but to have to face, Leamington or Collingwood, you really want to be in the top as opposed to the bottom to avoid those matchups.
For sure.
Right?
And I would even say, I think that there isn't even though in the standings there is between Leamington and Collingwood, I think Milton's right up there with them.
Absolutely.
I think it was a rough start for the Menace, but they're right up there, in terms of, I think, the skill level they have, their ability to be able to get out of the first round. It's a tough matchup. So definitely avoiding that 6th spot to have to deal with Milton. And of course, if they were to shift a little lower than that, but I think those 4, 5, and 6, those 3 teams, it is going to be a dogfight down the stretch.
Let's continue on about Milton for 1 second here, because unranked in the CJHL rankings, And the coaches poll has them at number 4 ahead of both Halliburton and the JRCs. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. How, like, just what does that say to you? It's interesting.
Well, I think part of it, the West, I think there is a bit more of the teams that Milton has to play. They had a win against Leamington a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I think that plays a role when you have to go up against the 2 top teams, and you're still staying relatively in pace with them. A little bit surprising, I think, that JRC would be 6th. I think that they've earned to be a bit higher than that. But at the same time, there's a lot of recency bias as well. Junior Canadiens lost to Trenton a couple weeks ago, so it makes a big difference. But I think the Menace are getting respect because they've been recently, over the last few months, really outside of the first month, they've been competitive neck and neck from that pace with Collingwood and Leamington. But Junior Canadiens and the Huskies, all those teams, outside of going Trenton and Leamington 1 and 2, I think there's arguments to be made each week, depending on who they play, for all those teams to be in the race. It's truly, truly a bottleneck of talented teams in the OJHL up at the top, and especially in the top 6.
I'm fascinated by the OJ coaches who see these teams, week in, week out, getting their perspective on it as opposed to the CJHL rankings. It's just very interesting to me when you see a team like Milton, who has been in the top 20 before, but leapfrog, a team that's, what did I say? The JRCs are 11th right now. I mean, leapfrog all the way up to there. So it's really cool to get that perspective. And it's also cool seeing Milton, again, doing as well as they are. I remember watching the Ice Hawks way back in the day. They did have a good team in the early 2000s, and then just things did not go well for a while. And then they stopped, and then they started anew with I guess it was Newmarket that moved to Milton, if I'm correct, and they renamed it the Menace, so there was no ties to the old name. And what a great job they have done in the Milton minor hockey community. You look at those crowds there, it's filled with kids, Milton minor hockey kids. The atmosphere is great, and they've got a competitive team. Every year they've been in the league, the Menace. They've been a competitive team, and I'm excited to see them in the playoffs here. Anyway, I'm going off here, but I wanted to ask you about Trenton because they are number 1 in the East right now. Like, same old hat with the Golden Hawks every year, but I mean, they've been unreal this year. They had a 15-game winning streak earlier in the season. Right now, they're on a 12-gamer. What's your take on the Golden Hawks this season as someone who's seen them quite a bit?
Well, it's one of those things. It's something you repeat every year. The Golden Hawks are a juggernaut year in and year out. Always an impressive team, from the back end up, forward core. David Fournier and Teo Artichuk have been fantastic as that 1-2 punch up front. I think their defense is a little bit different. They kind of went a little smaller. Obviously, they had Dylan Stiles last year, Owen Wilson on the back end. They were bigger, a little bit more smaller and skilled, but they've added Aaron Brown just recently. Earlier in the year, there was some good effort at the back end from Camden O'Neill, who I saw, and it was good to see that there's a lot of difference in the defense core that they have. But I think what the Golden Hawks have really benefited from strongly the last few seasons is good goaltending. We saw Ben Bonesteel last 2 playoffs rounds in the last 2 years really took them over the top. This year, they had Brady Spry at the beginning of the season. He's consistently done his duties there, but you can't ignore what Ryan Sanborn has done. Just a fantastic goalie. He has not lost a game yet for the Golden Hawks. Really not giving up many goals. It's a really tough team to contend with. They have a lot of depth. The addition at the deadline of Owen McKinnon and Nate Taylor from Lindsay, I think, will really propel them. They brought back, it was an acquisition they had last year at the deadline, have them again with Jamie Darlison. So the depth is what really brings Trenton to the top. And obviously, being with the Junior Canadiens, I know all too well. Last 2 series in the second round, the Golden Hawks have eliminated the JRC. And, there's no reason to suggest it won't be those 2 teams in the Eastern Conference Final again this year. Obviously, plenty can happen between now and then. But, the Golden Hawks, they just, in all facets of the game, they're really able to get the upper hand. And there's just no sign of that stopping. So it's quite amazing to see. It becomes frustrating when they keep beating your team, but at the end of the day, you got to give the cards to the Golden Hawks, and we'll see what happens in the playoffs this year. But right now, they're the favorite to go all the way, and but I'm sure a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference will want to have a say in that.
Okay, so in the Western Conference, and we'll keep this quick, but is this the year that the streak ends for the Collingwood Blues? Is there a three-peat this year, or do you think Trenton or Leamington are just a little bit too strong?
Well, I'll say this: winning a three-peat, as we've recently seen in the world of football, it's very hard to do. It's a hard thing to get that third one. Obviously the Collingwood roster still is fantastic, but it has changed. You don't have Noah Pack in goal. They don't have Dylan Houdon.
Just lost Jack Rimmer.
Yeah. They still have Marcus Laheed, of course, a big part of the leadership group, and Cameron Eek. But what I will say, I think the difference is Collingwood is most likely going to have to play the Menace in the second round. And I think that series will be a dogfight, and it probably will go 7 games. And there's no telling right now, sitting here right now, the Menace could come out on top of that series. It would not surprise me. And then regardless of what happens, you'll have a situation where most likely Leamington playing one of those teams we talked about, Buffalo, Burlington, or the Patriots, whoever comes out on top, unless there is an upset, it's very possible. But either way, I think that second round series for the Blues, it's not to say that they won't be able to win, but it's just going to be the breakdown of the body after a very intense second round. I can't see them getting through Leamington or even that other team after that series if someone is able to go on a heater and go all the way to the final. So I think this is the year where the Blues don't get it done. If I'm wrong, I apologize to Collingwood. They're a fantastic team to watch and to announce when they're in the games. But I think
Blues fans, if you meet the JRCs in the final this season and you're at the pond, you can let Jaren hear it. You know where to find him. You know where to find it. You know what? You could. I could imagine the abuse you get wouldn't be too bad. You're too much of a nice guy, buddy. But
thank you. No, I will say the Collingwood fans were fantastic last year. We had a
good
makeup game when they came into the pond, and it was rescheduled. It was an afternoon game, and just unbelievable people. Fantastic talking to them, and they have a very good team. We'll see. Anything's possible.
Yeah, when we did the CHCH broadcast, I've been to more than one game there, but I remember when we were there for the CHCH broadcast. It was in January or February, I think, of 2020, right before everything shut down. And Collingwood was the last game that we did, and man, did they treat us like royalty. We had it was just a first class setup, and such a great broadcast booth to call the game from as well. Just an old school arena, which those are my favorite kind of arenas, So great fans, great rink. We're almost done here, but let's just sort of finish off with the scoring race this season. Is a fascinating one. It has been. Looked like Colton Smith was going to run away with this for a while. Now it's him and David Fournier just sort of going back and forth. I think they're tied at the moment in first. Teo Artichuk within striking distance as well. I think he's only about 4 points behind. Anyway, those are just 3 guys, but it's been a fascinating scoring race, and it doesn't have to be one of these guys, but if you were picking an MVP this year, could be a goalie, could be a defenseman, who would be your MVP pick for the league this year?
I think it's tough to ignore what Colton Smith has done. I think the dominance he showed from the start of the season all the way until now with Leamington, the Flyers rely on him, right? He's a huge part of their offensive engine. While David Fournier has been fantastic and he's done really well in the playoffs for the Golden Hawks, I think because Trenton have so much, I think they've got 7 guys who are over a point per game or something to that effect. I think you have to go with Colton Smith. Goaltending, obviously, it ebbs and flows in the league. There's a lot of really good goaltenders, but what Smith has done offensively for the Flyers, they've added depth, but without him, I don't know if they're as powerful as they are. He's a huge difference maker. And so right at this moment, I would say Colton Smith is the MVP. And I think the Flyers have really treasured what he's provided for them this season.
That's normally, I'm just sort of checking out to see, pulling up the schedules. I'm trying to see Leamington and Trenton so far this season. Trenton's won one. I should have done this before to get the proper stats on this, to see how they've done head to head exactly. Anyway, on quick glance, I've only seen the one game that Trenton took, but to me, that is my definition of the MVP. It's not just who wins the point total; it is who is most valuable to your team. Now, that being said, I don't think it's on a last place team. It's got to be a team that's competitive, and it's typically going to be a team in the playoffs. But it's true. When you look at a team that's got so much balance, for example, then you look at another team who maybe doesn't have as many high scoring guys, as you mentioned, like Trenton's just got such good balance. They can draw on so many players. Not to say that Leamington doesn't, but that's typically my definition of a most valuable player is if you took that person out of the lineup, how would the team do? Would they do as well? And I think that, I mean, obviously it would be a hit to either team if Fournier and Colton Smith weren't in the lineup. But yeah, I think you're right. An argument could be made that maybe Colton is a bit more necessary to the success of the Flyers than Fournier would be to the Golden Dogs. But I mean, I'm talking out of my you-know-what here because they're just such good. Both of them are such solid teams, but I've been impressed by Fournier and Smith all season long. I had Smith on the show a couple of weeks ago. Great interview. Great kid. Yeah. So, but yeah, just finally, man, how long has it been since you've been doing this now with the JRCs?
So this is season 8. I did my first game. It was my first solo game was when I was 16 years old. I was filling in. I did a playoff game. That would have been in 2016. So the 16-17 season was my first year doing it. And, I've loved every minute of it, and that's why I'm still doing it. It's so much fun just having that creative freedom, being able to say what I want to say. I mean, for those watching who don't know, I have an individual goal call for each player on the Junior Canadiens, and that's what I use. And it's been fun. I mean, even watching old clips of how I've changed over the years. But for me, it's the fun. How much I enjoy each game, enjoy watching the players perform, and enjoy the connection with coaching staff, with other broadcasters, support staff, and the parents of the players. It's just so much fun, and I enjoy coming out all the time to do games, and nowhere else I'd want to be, Alex.
Two of my favorites, engine number 9, all aboard the Fukakusa line.
Dropped off, Bigras backhands at Fukakusa. Oh, what a move! What a goal! Engine number 9, all aboard the Fukakusa line.
And all hail Malcasian Nation.
That's taken away by Luke Malcasian. Malcasian winding forward towards the net, backhand try, scores! All rise, Malcasian Nation! And what a great sensation it was!
That was a good one, too, with the Malcasian brothers, man. So, like I said, I'm a fan of your calls. I think you do a great job with the JRCs. And I remember when you first came into the league, that was only a year after I started doing the OJ Today. And I had a couple of people mention to me, you should check out this kid, Jaren, from the Toronto Junior Canadiens. You wouldn't believe he's only 18 years old. And then I tuned in the stuff, and I was like, this kid is good. Like, and you were a kid, I mean, geez, I was an old man by then, but you were a kid, man. And you did a fantastic job with them. So anyway, I still think that you do a great job, man. I'm looking forward to hearing your calls.
Thank you.
Yep. And we'll do this again. Listen, we'll do this again. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And keep up the great work.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
And that is going to wrap things up for today. And huge thanks to Jaren for taking the time to join me. I've been watching his stuff for years with the JRCs, and he's definitely got one of the best calls in the league and some of the more inventive, unique goal calls in all of hockey. Love listening to his stuff. Just a reminder, of course, we're getting so close to the postseason now, and you've got to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the lead up to the playoffs with all the playoff positioning. It's going to be really exciting down the stretch. And of course, into the battle for the Buckland in the playoffs. To stay up to date, Make sure you check out the league's official social media outlets. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week.